The 2001 Mustang Bullitt is definitely one of my favorite Mustangs. I love the 99 to '04 cars. People who know me know that very well. I've had 18 Mustangs and most of them have been the New Edge Mustangs, the 99 to '04 series. Of course, I've owned Terminator Cobras, Mach 1s, higher trim level cars than the Bullitt. I've owned several GTs, base model cars as well, but the Bullitt has always been one of my favorites. In 2001, the Cobra was as good as it got, and the Bullitt was right there below. And as a matter of fact, on a side note, in 5.0 magazine, when they tested the Bullitt against the '01 Cobra against the Mach 1, the Bullitt actually outperformed the '99 Cobra. It is a lighter car, it doesn't have the heavy IRS, and with its modifications, it actually ran a faster quarter-mile time than the '99 Cobra. So I really like the car, and even though it's a GT and it's based off a 2-valve engine, I think they are remarkable cars. Now Ford did want to make this a 32-valve car, but at the time SVT owned all the rights to the 32-valve for the Mustang, and I find that actually kind of interesting because I know that Lincoln had the 32-valve in the Mark 8, and that engine was very similar to a 96 to 98 Cobra engine, and as a matter of fact, it was out in earlier production cars such as the 93 Mark 8, where the modular 4.6 4-valve didn't make it into the Cobras until 96. So here you have a Ford product, a Lincoln, that had a 32-valve, and it was actually a Texas block engine, just like the 96 to 98 Cobras. It didn't have a forged crankshaft in it like the Cobras did because it didn't spin that high with an automatic transmission, but it did have the 32-valve in it. And you might think that, well, Lincoln can't really share with Ford in that regard, but we do know that the Aviator program later with the Mach 1 actually had the cylinder head design for the Mach 1 and the Terminator already with the different camshafts and head designs. So I wonder why they couldn't put the 32 valve from the Lincoln in the Bullitt, because it would have been very similar. Now the main reason they said they couldn't put the 4-valve engine in the Bullitt was because SVT still had the rights. Now I wonder if that's the intake manifold issues. If you look at the top of this engine, there's a snake on top of the intake manifold on the 99 to '01 Cobra, and that intake manifold belonged to SVT. Maybe they couldn't put that on or recast it for the Bullitt, but later they did for the Mach 1. If you look at this engine, it's a Mach 1 engine with a Mach 1 intake manifold, which looks just like the 99 Cobra, just without the snake on it. So the Mach 1 did get the 4-valve in it after the Bullitt program, and the Bullitt was talked about to have that 4-valve in there, but they just couldn't quite do it that early. And so that's something you'll find later on as you go through, is a lot of the things they wanted to do to the Bullitt, but they couldn't, they ended up doing to the Mach 1. And we'll talk about engine configuration and what they did with the Bullitt, because we know it does have a special intake manifold. But the story about the Bullitt Mustang actually begins earlier with the '99 Mustang GT 35th anniversary package. Not just a normal GT, but the package car. If you look at this car, the wheels were different than the GT. They were actually polished with the dark argent, the anthracite color inside the wheels. You can also see a lot of exterior modifications to the car. This is a 1999. The hood scoop is different than the 2001, and let's remember that this hood scoop was not on any production Mustang except for the '99 anniversary edition. So if you look at that scoop, it does look like the 2001 and later scoop on the GTs, but it comes down towards the back and slants farther back to the back of the hood line there, and it's almost flush where the back of it meets the hood. So the other one is kind of domed and rounded, and you can see also there is a graphic on the hood there, a black stripe that goes up to the scoop. And if you look at the side scoops, you'll see they're actually flush on the sides and they twist towards the back, and that's another difference. And the same goes for the spoiler. It looks like a 2001 spoiler, but it's actually flush on the top. It does not have a little rim around the back side of it, as you would notice in an '01 and later Mustang V6 GT or Mach 1 spoiler. Also, you'll notice that blackout panel. I really like that blackout panel on the back with the honeycomb on it, behind the GT badge, I've even seen it has a screw in there from the factory. So it is a little bit interesting of a piece, and I like it, and it was actually part of the 35th anniversary package, as well as the seats. The seats had a silver leather insert on them, a shift ball as well, like the Bullitt would end up having, and even silver door inserts on the doors. You can see the seats have the embroidered pony on there as well. But the main thing about this was the engine. It was a normal engine just like any GT. And that's where the Bullitt wanted to pick up with something a little bit different. You see, I love the GT, the 35th anniversary package cars. I think they're very special, and I think they're very undervalued for what they are and not known about as much. My brother has done an excellent video on the difference between this and the standard GT. And so you can watch that video. I'll put a link in the description. But when it came down to the idea for the Bullitt Mustang, they wanted to do more than just appearance and interior. They wanted to do those things, but they also wanted to do suspension and performance as well. I did purchase the book Engineer Plus Enthusiast Equals Excitement, and it talks about building the 2001 Bullitt Mustang as well as the 0304 Mach 1s. And Anthony Alonso wrote this book. He did a great job with it, and he interviewed Scott Hogue, who was the chief engineer of the program for the Bullitt and the Mach 1. And this was a pretty good book. I wish it had some more smaller details that weren't known in the Bullitt community. There were a lot of things that I read in this book, and they were well known already, but I kind of wanted to know some more of the special, smaller details. For example, the Bullitt hologram stickers. It is known that there were 3 made for every car, and that there was a 4th one produced for the engine bay because it was rubbing off, and you could go to Ford and have that ordered for your car. They only made 1 more for every car, and it was supposed to be placed on the strut tower because the other one would fade. But it was well known that there were 3 stickers made for every car for production. 1 was for the strut tower, 1 was for the frame behind the driver's seat, and below the rear seat on the frame. That's where the other hologram sticker is located. And the 3rd one was known to have been made in case one of those stickers got wrinkled or messed up in the event of production. So when they were putting those stickers on the strut towers and the frame, if they messed one up, they had a 3rd sticker to use in that case. But I had always heard that that 3rd sticker was saved and put in a mason jar at Ford, and along with all the other Bullitt hologram stickers, and that they buried that in a time capsule. So I don't know if that's true or not, and that wasn't mentioned in the book. I was hoping that there would be some more information on that, because if that is true, it would be cool to know if Ford is going to dig that up one day and do something with it, or you know, maybe have a car meet with all the Bullitt owners that are still existing, or a drawing, a prize giveaway, something cool like that. So I was hoping that that kind of information was in the book, and as far as the book said, it said that the 3rd hologram stickers were discarded or thrown away. So either that's contrary to the truth, or that is the truth, and the other is just a myth or legend. So it didn't clarify much about that other than saying they were discarded, and maybe that is the truth. So this picture is actually my 4th Bullitt's hologram sticker. I did get it from Ford, and they actually didn't want to give these out. I got the envelope and they gave it to me, and inside it had the instruction sheets for the Ford tech to put it on the car, and it said, "Do not give this to the customer." And it is commonly known in the Bullitt community that people could go in and get the sticker, and the Ford techs didn't know that they were the ones who were supposed to put it on the car. A lot of people like me keep this sticker because we want to put it in a shadow box or in our documentation and hold on to it and not have it on the car. Now, Ford's reason behind this is because they didn't want those stickers getting loose, like mine is loose, and several other people I've talked to who have their stickers, because they didn't want people putting them on non-Bullitt cars on the strut towers and trying to sell them as Bullitt Mustangs. In this case, you can see this is my hologram sticker, and I've taken pictures of it with a light in 3 different ways to show it has the Ford logo on top. If you look at it another way, it has the running pony in kind of a rainbow color. And if you look at it at another angle, you see the Mustang cursive, which appears on the dashboard, the passenger side airbag, of the 94 to 04 Mustangs, it's in that same font. And so those are kind of the three different things that show up on the hologram sticker. It's pretty neat to see. You might notice that the number there is 4622. It's hard to read on the top, but the production bullets actually had a 0 in front of that number. So that's how you will tell if this is the fourth hologram sticker, because the fourth hologram sticker was produced knowing how many units were produced in total, and they knew that it wasn't going to go over 10,000, and so there was no need for a 0 in front of the first digit there, because it was a known number and there wasn't going to be a need for that 0 anymore. So I thought that was actually interesting. Now, on the topic of selling a Mustang as a Bullitt when it really is not a Bullitt Mustang, there is a good conversation about that to be had. And that is, people with 2001 Mustang GTs sometimes market their cars for sale as a 2001 Mustang Bullitt when it is not a Bullitt. The Bullitts obviously were made in certain colors, and they had all the certain bullet pieces to them, and they were numbered cars. Now, you might be very critical, as I have been and other Bullitt Mustang owners have been in the past, when they see somebody post their Mustang for sale and they say, this is a 2001 Mustang Bullitt for sale, it's zinc yellow or Oxford white, or some color that we know that the Bullitt didn't come in, like this GT for example. If you see a Mustang GT like this for sale and it's a 2001 and they claim this is a Mustang Bullitt, you might get upset about that and tell them that is not a Bullitt Mustang, and you would be right. But one problem with that is the reason some people think that these are Bullitt Mustang cars is because when they had registered this car, it's usually the private seller, when they have registered this car, the insurance card they get actually says 2001 Ford Mustang GT / Bullitt, because in their insurance database it is seen as the same car under insurance as a Mustang GT / Bullitt. It's showing that it's a GT and it could be the Bullitt package as well. And I've also heard that some states have actually had it on the title. My Utah title for my 2001 Mustang Bullitt says 2001 Ford Mustang GT. It doesn't say anything about Bullitt. So you might see that as maybe somebody with a 35th anniversary package GT or a 40th anniversary package GT would have a title, and it does not say anything about being a 35th or a 40th anniversary. So these hologram stickers are very important, and that's why you can tell a Bullitt Mustang apart from the other cars. The VIN number has nothing to do with it being a Bullitt, except for the fact that Ford can look it up and know that it was a Bullitt by the VIN number. Speaking of VIN number, why do the 0304 Mach 1s not have hologram stickers? It's because of all this headache with the hologram stickers and having to produce others. They said that was cool for the Bullitt, but we don't want to do that with the Mach 1. So as they continued planning for the 03 and 04 Mach 1s, they actually decided to change a part of the VIN number so it would have the letter R in it. And historically, R on a Mach 1 was for shaker hood. It meant that it was a Mach 1. It was a good way to tell. I'm pretty sure the Boss 302 as well, that had a shaker hood, would have an R in it, but that's why you see a lot of guys with these Mach 1s who are very proud of them, and they have their license plate say R code, because it is something that signifies the car as being a Mach 1. And so that's what they did for the Mach 1, but of course the Bullitt is very special because it has that really cool hologram sticker. So the first Bullitt Mustang I saw was owned by the local owner of the Ford dealership here in town, really cool guy. I had seen the Bullitt before I saw these, but these were actually the pre-production prototype pictures of the car. Now, these are very interesting, and if you look closely, there are some weird things about them. When this car was being designed, they looked at the front of this car, and they also looked at the 68 Mustang that Steve McQueen used in the movie Bullitt, and they wanted to do something special with the grille. As you can see in this picture, the grille used down towards the bottom a lot farther down and deeper down than the standard Mustang GT bumper did. I definitely like the stock grille a lot better. I like the bumper better. And if you look at this picture of a actual Bullitt Mustang, you will see that it has the stock grille, just like the GT and V6 did, and the pony's there, but the corral, or the part that the running pony is inside, has been blacked out. And the reason they blacked that out was because they actually wanted to have no running pony in there. If you look at the 1968 Bullitt Mustang, it had no running pony in it for the movie. And so they wanted to have that look. But they tried to compromise and said, we're not going to take the running pony off the front of our Mustang. So let's just take the corral and black it out, and that way it will look like it's more free, and it's kind of paying tribute to the dark grille on the 68. Now later we would have the Mach 1 that has the Mach 1 grille delete. I think that's probably an even better expression of the pony being free. But if we look at the front of this car, you can see that whole front fascia is different. The bumper cover, the fog lights, everything is different on the concept car. Now, why did they not go with this? The reason was testing. As you understand the development of the Bullitt Mustang, you will realize that there are a lot of things in this car that they had to change from what they wanted to do, because they needed to keep this Mustang in the realms of a Mustang GT as far as cost. It would cost a lot of money to crash test this car with the new bumper, because they would have had to move the actual bumper cover and the actual foam crash pad and the bumper underneath that bumper to make that bumper actually work. And to do that, they would have to crash test one car to make sure that it was safe. And if you're going to do all of that testing, it really makes the project not worth it. It really adds to the cost of the project. So this is known as the 2000 Mustang GT Bullitt concept car. This car was not street legal because of all of those things on the appearance, the bumper, and so forth. And so it was the prototype that housed a lot of the ideas that they wanted to do with the Bullitt. So as we continue to look at this prototype, we see that it has Bullitt style wheels, which was something that they couldn't create just for the Bullitt Mustang, but Ford was working with a company. They were called Superior Wheels, and they were working with them to design a new production wheel for not only the Bullitt but for other Mustangs. But they did like the idea of the torque thrust style, Krager style wheels, which is what the 1968 Mustang Bullitt had on it in the movie. And so when you see those wheels, you really think retro, and I really like these wheels a lot. So I actually saw Mustang GTs showing up at the Ford dealership in 2001 with the Bullitt wheels on them. And I thought, whoa, those are Bullitt wheels, but the brakes aren't red, so how come it has those on there? And I was kind of confused. But the truth is, Ford could not tool a specific wheel like that just for the Bullitt Mustangs with 5582 production units. This was a wheel that they made, and it was on the GTs as the premium package wheels. I really like them. Like I said, I think they're really cool looking wheels. I love the center caps. I love everything about them. But you'll notice that this 2001 GT has the Bullitt wheels on them, and they're a light gray with a hammered finish. And those ran from 2001 to 2002. And in 2003 and 4, they changed that color to a darker color Bullitt wheels. So if you see an 03 or 04 GT with Bullitt wheels on it, they really aren't the same color as Bullitt wheels. And a little secret, I actually like those better. So my Bullitt actually has the wheels on this GT. This was my sister's car. This was my GT when it was wrecked. I bought it from a friend when it was wrecked, and I liked those wheels so much that my Bullitt has those on the front and the deep dish rear ones on the back, because they match the aftermarket ones better than the original lighter gray Bullitt wheels did. So here's a comparison of the 01-02 lighter gray hammered finish Mustang GT wheels. So if you have a Bullitt Mustang and you're looking for a replacement wheel, any Bullitt wheel from an 01 or 2 is the exact same wheel. So that is not technically a specific Bullitt part. It is something you can get. Some people bend a wheel on their Bullitt Mustang and they freak out and ask where they're ever going to find another original Bullitt Mustang wheel. The fact is they're the same as the 01 or 2 Mustang GTs that came with the Bullitt wheels. So here's the 03, 04 close-up look. Beautiful darker gray, smoother paint finish. It just looks so much better in my opinion, but it is the same wheel, just different coloring. So here's a little bit of the promotional pictures for the Bullitt, showing how nice that the Bullitt wheels were, the center cap, and those PBR brakes with the Brembo rotors. It was a PBR Brembo brake combination. Same brakes that the Cobra had, and the Mach 1, and the brake booster and everything. And those calipers were actually powder coated red from the factory with a laser etched pony in them. They were not just painted red, they did not have a sticker of a horse, they were actually laser etched. So those would be the 13-inch discs up front, and the back had like 11, almost 11 and a half, somewhere around there. And the rear actually used the same calipers that a GT would have on the back. It was just brackets that spaced them out so that they could fit on a bigger rotor for the back. So again, here are the two comparisons. Here's a laser red GT with the lighter gray wheels. And in 03, they changed it to Red Fire. So here's a Red Fire GT with the darker wheels. It is quite a difference. So the wheels that were actually on the concept car were a one-off billet aluminum wheel that they made just for the show car. They never made it to production, but they definitely had the design that did make it there. Something interesting about the LA Auto Show was this car was featured, but for some reason Ford decided to pull it out of the show. But what they realized was there was so much positive attention around this car that they went back to headquarters determined to build the Bullitt Mustang. And while we're looking at the quarter panel, you can see that Bullitt fuel door. That is a brushed aluminum fuel door with the running pony and tri-bar on it. In the end, Ford decided to go with just a brushed aluminum door, and I think it looks great. I love the Bullitt fuel door. It even has a chrome pony on the inside if you open it. So if we look at one of these Bullitt fuel doors, you can see that the hardware around it, that is not hardware to secure the door to the car. That is just for looks. But those star-shaped screws are almost impossible to find. And they do come loose and sometimes they come out. And so I've actually taken mine out and wet sanded them because they started to get a little bit of oxidation on them. But if you look at this fuel door, you'll see that it looks like a Bullitt fuel door and it has that all in there. But there is some difference between aftermarket ones. Here is an actual Bullitt one with the part number on it. And when you look at the back side of this fuel door, it looks mirror finish. It is totally chrome. It is an aluminum fuel door, but the back side is totally polished or whatever it is that makes it so shiny. I love when I get gas. I always open the fuel door on my Bullitt and I see how chromed out that is, and I make sure to clean it and keep it nice because it gets water spots and things on it when it gets cleaned and washed. But you can see there's a part number on it. I believe this is an actual true Bullitt fuel door because when you do look at the other ones that Ford sells, if you were to buy one in a catalog, it is not chrome on the back side. For example, here is a Ford OEM Bullitt reproduction, and this is one that you would buy in the Ford Racing catalog. My brother actually bought two of these once. He had some credit with Ford, and he went ahead and ordered two of these because he thought they were neat, and when they showed up, they were like this, where they weren't polished and chromed on the back side of them, so they were a little bit different in color. And if you look at this one in the bottom corner, I believe that 04 means that this one was actually produced in 2004. So even though it has the running pony and the Ford and everything and it looks great, I don't believe this is technically a real OEM Bullitt fuel door. So as we look down the side of the Bullitt concept car, you can see that it doesn't have side scoops. They're body filled and painted, and that's just something that the assembly line couldn't do. If you look behind one of these scoops on any Mustang from 99 to 04, there's holes there drilled, there's a big piece missing in the metal work. It's not easy to fill that in. So Ford wanted to do something special with that, and if you look at the side of a Bullitt Mustang, you'll see it actually has a side scoop piece, and it is on there, and it's an actual molding. It's not just body filler and paint. Now this is not to be confused with the earlier New Edge side scoops. that were featured on the 99 to '04 V6 cars and the early GTs for 99 and 2000, and even the 99 to '01 Cobras and Cobra Rs all had this style side scoop. That was almost a half scoop, but it had some honeycomb in there. So here's a picture of a side scoop from, who knows whether it was an early GT for 99 and 2000 or a V6. Most likely it was a V6 because they're so common, but I find it actually interesting that Ford used those even in the 2001 Cobra Mustang, because in 2001 all the GTs had full side scoops. So the GTs, Mach 1s, Terminator Cobras, all of those had a full scoop with the honeycomb insert. Although the Terminator had horizontal inserts, that is something that a lot of people don't know about the Terminator Cobra, and that is to match the hood vents. And if we want to get really specific, going back to the 99 35th anniversary GT, it also had some side scoops that weren't featured until 2001, but they were available on the anniversary package, although they were slightly different, and even the honeycomb inside was a different pattern. Now, I had read once that those Bullitt side scoops were actually in jeopardy until 1 week before production of actually making it onto the car, and that the assembly line wanted to actually have the GT scoop on the side, which I wouldn't have really noticed much different, I wouldn't think. But anyway, it was something that was very debated, and it turns out that those side scoops were actually painted on the car. So they did not go and get painted separately. The car went to paint and the scoops were inserted, and the car was painted with the scoops on, which was something that has never happened before with the Mustangs from 94 to '04. Now, I don't know if that's true, but that is what I have heard. And so here are some prototype pictures of the side scoop and the side skirts. If you look at these side skirts, you'll notice that they are one piece and they go all the way from one side to the other. The Bullitt Mustang production pieces are actually two-piece, and right where the door line comes down, it actually splits, and there is a front rocker panel piece and a rear, which is the rest of the length of the door there. And that front piece is actually called the spats, front spats. And what you may not have known is this was actually part of the Mach 1 program, and those Bullitt side skirts and front spats were actually supposed to be on the '03 '04 Mach 1, but at the end they decided to do away with them, and they went ahead and ran the normal V6 or GT side skirts on these cars. It was just so much easier to do it that way. And the biggest problem they had with those mud flap pieces was they could run over curbs with them and do things in testing, but running over backwards off of a curb was busting them off. And anybody who knows anything about these Bullitt side skirts knows that these break off easily, and a lot of Bullitts you find for sale are missing them because they catch on speed bumps and things like that. And my car didn't have one on the driver's side when I bought it. As a matter of fact, when I asked the previous owner where it was, he said it kept falling off, so I threw it away. I was upset about that because these are out of production. Ford doesn't make them or sell them anywhere. In that case, it would have been better if he would have just kept it and I could have found a way to make it fit and work back on the car and modify it. Luckily, there was somebody in Las Vegas who was making aftermarket ones for a while. They still might be making them, and I bought one from that person. They were made out of fiberglass, and the reason Ford didn't want to make these out of fiberglass is because when they did bump into things or get caught in a pothole or something, they would flex a little bit with the plastic that they're made out of, and the fiberglass would crack and shatter. But regardless, I'm happy that I have a set. The car looks complete with them on there, and I'm very happy to have those. So continuing with this Bullitt concept car, when we look at the back, we find there's quite a few little differences on the back that did not make it to production. You can see a shaved deck lid there with an inserted license plate area. You can see the back bumper is different, which I'm going to talk about, and also a spoiler. So if we take a good look at the back of this concept of the Bullitt, you'll notice that rear bumper is very similar to the '03 '04 Terminator Cobra. You can see that the lower valence goes all the way from one side to the other with indentions for the exhaust tips, and it has that fatter rear bumper that the 0304 Cobra has. So if you look here at the picture of my 03 Cobra versus my 04 Mach 1, the Mach 1 has the same bumper that the GT and the Bullitt would have. And the 03 Cobra has, obviously, the 03-04 Cobra bumper. And you can see the difference between the two. The lower valence, like I said, goes all the way around the exhaust tips from side to side, where on the other one there's a little indentation and some slats there. It's just kind of a very different bumper, and I like the 01 GT bumper, the Mach 1 bumper. I really like that bumper, but you can see that the Bullitt concept car actually carried over, and I think that's where they got the idea and the design for the 03 Cobra bumper. And while we are looking at the back of these cars, look at the differences between the spoilers. The 03 Cobra, or the Terminator spoiler, is a kind of duckbill, tall in the back with a brake light integrated into its spoiler versus the other one. And if you look at this Bullitt concept, it has a very similar look to the spoiler. So everyone knows that the Bullitt Mustangs were made with no rear spoiler. And a lot of people say, that's just cheap, that the Bullitt Mustang is missing fog lights, it's missing a spoiler, and they're charging more for it. They've removed parts and they're charging more. But the real truth is you're getting a lot of parts in the place, like the Bullitt intake manifold that we'll talk about later, and the fact that they actually did design a spoiler for the Bullitt, and they were going to, but they had so many problems with it, they ended up saying, you know what, if the idea is to be subtle, then why not just remove it? They didn't want a big spoiler on the car, and so they said, in the end, if the thing we're going to is a sleek look, then why don't we just remove the spoiler and not have one? And so in the end, they decided that the rear GT bumper cover was just fine. Again, they probably would have had to do crash tests on the other one, and all sorts of problems arose. And so they went ahead and just had the GT rear bumper cover, which I really, really like. I actually like it better than the 0304 Cobra bumper, especially on a Bullitt or a Mach 1 where it belongs. But looking at the rear bumper here, you can see it has that lower valence area with the slats in it, and that was actually something they thought about changing. Here's the concept photo. They were going to have a delete piece in there, a fill piece, just like how the side scoops were flush. They wanted to do that with the rear bumper of the car. So I thought that was very interesting, and very few people actually know about that. And so here on this forward drawing, you can see on the top right there is a picture of the bumper, and it says rear fascia insert molding plastic. So there is where they were going to put that. You can see the side skirts there, the side scoops that we talked about, and then next on the list is the C-pillars and glass. So as we look at this piece, this is the rear C-pillar, or the area that goes right behind the back window, and they wanted to change the shape of that back more like the 94 to 98 Mustang. It actually curved back, but when they made the new edge design, they swooped it. So if you look at this Mustang GT, you'll see that that C-pillar area has kind of a gradual swing to it, and it doesn't cut back towards the front of the car like the Bullitt does. So let's look at the difference here. See how that C-pillar kind of cuts forward and lines up with the side scoop? On the normal Mustang, it doesn't. It goes down the body line and it doesn't cut forward to line back up with the side scoop. Again, that was carried over on the Mach 1, so see the difference between the Mach 1 and the GT. See that difference? 1, 2. Mach 1 or Bullitt, GT. See here in this illustration, somebody drew the line difference. So here is a normal sail panel. See how it doesn't cut very sharp, and then look at how the Bullitt Mach 1 style one cuts back, and even the glass is different. And I like this picture because you can see that the glass has that little black border inside of it, and that is different glass and different bordering than the V6 GT or Cobra would have. So that is a Mach 1 and Bullitt specific thing. Now next on the list of things that the prototype car had that did not make to production was a different steering wheel, and the gauges and cluster were just a little bit different than what it turned out to be, as well as the pedals and the shift knob. Some of the things you can see there, even the shift ring is a little bit different than production. So those are a few of the interior cues. And of course that steering wheel was something that they could not produce for a few amount of units, and maybe even a crash test would have to be involved, and so it didn't make it to production. And that's okay because I don't really like it that much. But looking at the seats in the prototype, you can also see how they have those creases in the middle of the back area, in the middle of the lower area, and that did not make it to production. But I am interested in seeing that because when you look at a good set of Bullitt seats in a production Bullitt Mustang, you'll see they actually start to crease there on those 2 points, especially the lower area. You can see like it almost has a seam there. So you can see how maybe the people in charge of designing the seats knew that in those 2 areas the seats would start to crease, and it's interesting to see that carry over into a new one. And as we're looking inside the concept car again, you can see that the center console is different because it is actually a 2000 GT. And so therefore you have the fog light switch on the center console instead of down below the radio, and you have the older style cup holders there on that center console. So I think that's interesting to see that peeking through. And something that always gets left out is the door lock pins, door lock soldiers, whatever you want to call them. When you lock and unlock the doors, these little posts come up and down out of the door panels, and they're usually black. But on the Bullitt, they were this silver color. They're still plastic, but they were painted this nice color, and they really do add a good touch to the car. These would later be part of the interior upgrade package for the Mach 1s and the premium GTs and even the premium V6 cars that have that interior upgrade package, as well as the shift ball and ring area. These do look like the production pieces of the shift ball and shift ring, but if you look very closely, you'll see that traction control button. It actually has the spinning wheel on it. Now what's significant about that is it should have the words track off, no logo, and it should have a little circular bulb LED or little light there instead of a flush one like that one has on it, and like the rear defrost one has. You can see that little slit of a light there, and on the very top it's not illuminated, but you can see where it is. And so what's significant about that is the button that was on the very early 2001 Mustang GTs. For some reason, they changed it midway through the year, and that was also about the time they changed the engine and transmissions in the Mustang GTs mid-01. They changed them from Windsor 4.6 liter V8s to Romeo produced 4.6 liter V8s. And I've heard that the reason they did that was because the Romeo plant had a fire or a problem and they couldn't be making the Romeo engines for a while, so they made them at the Windsor plant. And so that's why the 99 and 2000 Mustang GTs have Windsor engines, and the mid-01 and later GTs had Romeos, just like the earlier GTs had Romeo engines in them. And so that is kind of a very interesting difference. Now the reason why this is significant is because all of the 2001 Mustang Bullets got the Romeo engines, as well as the transmission change. There was also a transmission change when they did that. So the Windsor engines had T45 transmissions, and the Romeo engines had TR3650 transmission 5 speeds. And those transmissions carried on from mid-01 all the way to 04, and the only difference in those years was the Mach 1 had the same transmission but a different overdrive gear ratio. And so I do notice also that these pedals, they look like the Bullitt pedals, and later the Mach 1 and Terminator Cobra pedals, although you can see these pre-production ones have little rivets or screws or something on them that the production models do not have. Now let's talk about the Bullitt engine for a little bit here. There are some things I'd like to talk about and some that I've never heard anyone else talk about which are very interesting. So this engine is the exact same engine out of a GT. It is a 4.6 liter Romeo engine, and this engine is the same as a Crown Vic for that year. It is the same for the Mustang GT. The cams are the same, the heads are the same, the oil pan's the same. Everything on it is the same except for some of the things that are bolted to the car. Obviously, the intake manifold is the main thing that everybody knows about with the Bullitt. And as we continue to talk about that, we'll get into some more detail. But some things to mention quickly are the alternator is different. It is a higher output alternator, and the water pump is different. It has a longer snout with a rounded pulley on it, and it's supposedly the same water pump that the F-150 uses, and it's supposed to be a little bit better. And also, technically, with that water pump change and some other pulley changes, it does have what's considered an underdrive pulley setup. Now, what a lot of people skip over and don't talk about is that the valve covers are actually different than the standard GT. So if we look at these cam covers or valve covers, whatever you want to call them, you can notice on the Mustang GT, the oil filler cap is on the passenger side. And that is something that changed when Ford went to the PI, or Performance Improved Head engines, in 1999. So the earlier 96 to 98 GTs that had the non-PI heads actually had what I would consider to be the same valve covers as what the Bullitt has. So again, looking back at the Bullitt engine, you can see here that the valve covers are different, where the oil filler cap is on the driver's side like the older 4.6 liter GT engines had. And something that we can see as well here is it has a bigger brake booster because it has the bigger brakes like the Cobra has. And as we're looking here in the engine bay, why would the oil filler cap be on the driver's side? Well, the answer to that is because the Bullitt intake, or the cold air intake section of the Bullitt intake, it curves down and it makes different angles where it gets in the way of where the oil filler cap would be on a PI engine oil filler cap valve cover. So that's the reason why, is because the intake gets in the way. And I learned that the hard way because I bought some BBK ones that were aftermarket, and they would not fit the Bullitt intake. Now, as we look at this Bullitt engine, we'll talk about the most important part of it, which is the aluminum intake manifold. And you can see the runners on those are very high. They're about twice as tall as the GT, which gets more displacement inside that intake manifold. It gets torque faster. That's why the Bullitt is so quick, is because it gets the torque sooner. And that intake manifold and the higher flowing exhaust really helps make up for that. And so yes, there's only a 5 horsepower or 10 horsepower difference between a Bullitt and a GT. One of the brochures rated the Bullitt at 275 horsepower. I've seen other things where they rated it at 270, so it's a 5 or 10, 15 horsepower increase. But it's not about the horsepower, it's about when it comes on and when the torque arrives. And that's what makes it so much faster than the standard GT. It just revs better. Now, looking at this Bullitt intake manifold, we're going to look at a couple things that are interesting. Obviously, this is a prototype one. It's smooth on the top. So the top section of that intake manifold is flat. Later in the production models, it will have these ribs on top. And I'm not sure if that is mostly just for design to make it look good. But what I understand from this intake manifold is that it was a Ford racing part, but the problem was it was too close to the firewall. And so the issue they had there was they didn't know if it would pass safety regulations if there was a crash, and that it might push into the firewall and it would change the whole way the car reacts in a crash. And like I talked about earlier, a lot of this program was about being in the budget and trying to use as much information as they could with the Mustang GT, and they could not do a crash test on a car. It was just too much for the budget to handle. So they did change that intake manifold, and they made it so that it would clear the firewall more and it would be safe. Looking at this prototype engine, you also see that the plastic intake manifold has kind of a dent in it, that shape. That's like what the 96 to 98 Cobra has on it, and that did not make it into production for whatever reason. You can see on this example it's smoothed out. Maybe it looks a little bit better. I don't know what the real reason was behind that, but as I've been saying, this car had to do so much to stay in the realm of what the GT and all the testing for the GT had, that another thing that was important was keeping the engine calibration within the emissions limits. Something interesting about the Bullitt intake manifold as well is that early production models had a little plug that was filled. It was part of the casting on the front of the intake manifold, and earlier Bullitts had that covered, but the later Bullitts, like mine, number 4622, it actually had that plug threaded, and it had a fitting in there, and it even had a coolant line that ran from the front of the intake manifold all the way to the back, and it even teed into the hose that goes into the firewall for the heater core. So that is something very interesting, and that T on the heater core is known to break. They get brittle and crack, and so I bypassed it, and then I put a plug in the threaded area. So I was able to get that plug from the back of an extra cylinder head I had lying around from a 2-valve engine, and it was just the perfect threads and everything, and so I just screwed it right in, and it fit perfect, and it plugged up the holes so that it wasn't a problem anymore. And so they did change the mufflers to sound better. The Bullitt does have specific mufflers, and that was something that the Mustang team that was in charge of the project was very proud of. They wanted this car to sound a little bit different and sound more like the old 68 Fastback GT390. So they worked really hard on the exhaust to tune it just right. And something that is also overlooked with the Bullitt and the Mach 1 is that the exhaust tips actually are different. They're a nicer tip, and they have the rolled tips as well. And so a lot of people like me, the first thing they do when they buy a car like this is they take that stock exhaust off and they put on a louder catback. And I did that, and I really love the SLP catback on mine, but I did keep my original Bullitt catback because I know it's special. The part numbers are special, the exhaust tips are special, and it's something that I'll always have. But the intake, exhaust, tune, all that was still something that they could use and keep the GT calibration or the tune for the car without changing it so much that they would have to do emission testing for the vehicle. And speaking of all the tests and things we've talked about, the crash tests, as a matter of fact, the suspension for the Bullitt, which is a little bit better, the sway bars are better, the springs and struts are different. The lowering springs does lower the car a little bit, 3/4 of an inch. And that was the first time they had factory lowered a Mustang, according to another article I read. And that was actually also done in the realm of keeping to the crash test. So they lowered the car just enough that it would still pass all the crash test certifications, and they wouldn't have to redo that. Now, something really neat about the Bullitt and the Mach 1 is to stiffen up the chassis. It actually has frame rail connectors or subframe connectors that are factory, and those are also found on convertible Mustangs to help strengthen the body. So they're basically bars that are bolted into the body that run basically where the side skirts are, but more in on each side underneath the car. Now, getting into the colors for the Bullitt Mustang, we know that the Bullitt movie car was called Highland Green. So they made dark Highland Green for the majority of the Bullitt Mustangs, over 3,000 of them, and that's what most people like and prefer. And I do really like that color, and I think it is the #1 choice. And they also made black, which was the next produced of 1818 or 1819 units. And then the True Blue, which was 722 units, which that number had changed from 723. They did a recount, said no, we found that we've only made 722 of them in True Blue. Yes, they are the most rare, but the most rare doesn't always mean the most desirable. And so, yeah, the True Blue Bullitt is one that a lot of people dislike, along with the black compared to the green ones because of how historic and you know, the name Bullitt should be a green Mustang according to most people, and that's okay if you feel that way. I'm happy to own a blue one, and the blue one to me is very special, and I actually like the color blue better than I like the color green, and so I'm cool with that. Now, I do like the dark Highland green and think that that is definitely a beautiful color. Here's a photo shoot I did with my friends. I have a friend who has a black one, my other friend has a green one, and I have the blue one. But the question is, why did they make the different colors for the Bullitt? Well, the real answer to that is simple. Ford did not want to have another limited production run of one color vehicles. They said the 2000 Cobra R had created a problem where they had a lot of customers who did not buy them or did not want to buy one because it only came in red. And they put their foot down and said, we are going to offer several colors for this car. So they talked about silver, they talked about other colors, and even though Scott Hogue was very, very set on the dark Highland green, he was not willing to give up the project or cause any trouble at this point and decided we can go ahead and offer some colors. Let's just make them all dark colors so they're all similar to the Highland green, like the original movie car was, or in this case, the dark Highland green. So I think it's cool to have this picture. This is my black Bullitt on the left next to my blue Bullitt on the right. That was a very short time when the two cars were together. And again, here's a picture of them together with my cousin's black Bullitt as well. Now, something else that's neat to mention, we were talking about colors. That was the only thing you could choose on a Bullitt was the color and one option. And that one option was not an automatic transmission or anything like that. It was the audio system, the Mach audio system. And later, that would be standard on all the Mach 1s and the Terminator Cobras. But for the Bullitt, it was actually an option. And mine actually does not have that. So technically my True Blue Bullitt is one of 54 that does not have the Mach audio system and one of about 26 that were United States models versus the Canadian models. So the Canadian Bullitt Mustangs had daytime running lights, a block heater, and I've heard that they actually had mirror lights on the rearview mirror like the convertibles would have. And obviously, to be a Canadian model, it was in kilometers, so it actually had the bullet gauge cluster in kilometers. And so technically, if you want to keep going with the real specific differences between the GT and the Bullitt, you can say that a Bullitt has the body code of P42, that's GT Coupe, but you have to order it as code 135A, which is the Bullitt package. You had to specify the paint color code and specify code 58M for the Mach 460 audio system if desired, and mine, like I said, does not have that. I really like the actual Bullitt badge as well. It sits there on the back of the car, almost to the line of the reverse light there. I've seen them a little higher, a little lower. I was curious on how those were put on. Actually, it is a tape badge where you peel the back off, you put it in a jig, and somebody on the assembly line would line it up and stick it on the back of the car so all the letters would be straight. And so they did vary up and down just slightly, but that's about where they were supposed to go. And if you look at the B in the letter Bullitt, it does look like two bullets going sideways. I'm not sure if that's what it's supposed to be. I've heard that it's supposed to be two bullet shells there. It's supposed to look like bullets. I know later in '08, when they made the newer Bullitt, they incorporated a target and they kind of played off the Bullitt name a little bit there, but I wasn't really too happy about that. I didn't think it really went with the theme of the car, but maybe the original Bullitt logo had that. And here the door sills, you actually do see the Bullitt logo appear again in these nice aluminum step plates, sill plates, whatever you want to call them, in the correct font, and that's something very special that is overlooked a lot on these cars. This was one of the coolest pictures of the Bullitt. It was in my local newspaper when the Bullitt came out. These press photo pictures are amazing and they look great. So something really neat was when they were developing the Bullitt, they did not have a test mule. The cars were actually scarce to come by at Ford right then for Mustang GTs to work on and use as project cars. And so they actually went over to Roush and talked to him about using one of the cars he had in his inventory that he was building to change into either a Roush Stage 1, 2, or 3. Roush and Ford worked together a lot, and I think that's really neat. And they said to Roush, do you have a Mustang that we can use and we'll do all the testing with, and when we're done you can have it as the you can keep all of our development and everything as a prototype vehicle, and it can be part of your collection and your museum. And so he did give them a black 2000 Mustang GT, and that is the car that the concept car was built off. Both the LA show, from what I understand, the LA Auto Show car with the weird bumpers and all that stuff was first used there, and then later they continued with the car and they upgraded it and updated it as they went along through the production process with all the Bullitt specific pieces as they came. And so that was something that I thought was really cool. And there's actually a video about this car, and it's on Jack Roush's YouTube channel, and I'll put the link in the description so you can see it. But basically he owns this car now, and you would not know that this was the production car just looking at it. It looks like a normal 2001 Mustang Bullitt. And on that video he says this is Bullitt number 1, and that Ford actually tried to get the car back from him and crush it because it was a prototype, but he said no, you remember, we took this car out of my inventory, this is my car, it's not getting crushed, it has a permanent home here in my museum, so I will always like Jack Roush for doing that. So if you see this in the museum, you'll know that this car started out as a Mustang GT. It is actually a black car that was painted dark Highland green. It was the press car. It had a lot of really neat things about it, and it does not have an actual Bullitt hologram sticker on it. It is not a serialized Bullitt Mustang. It is a 2000 Mustang GT that is technically Bullitt number 1, and that's what he calls it in the video, but it was not included in the 5582 production units of the Mustang Bullitt, and it does not have that sticker. But it did have a sticker on the strut tower that was not hologram or holographic, and it said number 1. Now, looking at these two stickers, you'll see the actual number 1 Bullitt sticker on a production vehicle versus the one on the black strut tower that this car has because it's a black car. Now, looking at the gauge cluster, this looks like the Bullitt factory production gauge cluster, but there is a little bit of a difference here. See how on the red line at 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, there are white dashes by the numbers. Those do not appear on the real gauge cluster. And this does look the same as the gauge cluster in a Mach 1, but the Mach 1 gauge cluster is different because on the Bullitt it says fuel door. It has the arrow right under the speedometer section, and on a Mach 1 it says premium unleaded only, and it's talking about the fuel, saying run only higher octane because the Mach 1 has a high compression engine compared to the GT Bullitt, and so it is telling you to make sure to run that higher grade fuel in it. And so the manual transmission Mach 1 runs to 6,800 RPM, so the red line is in a different place. The automatic Mach 1 has a different red line on the gauge cluster at 5,800 like the Bullitt does, and here is the Bullitt cluster with the 5,800 RPM, those differences we talked about, as well as a black bezel around the gauges themselves. And so you can see here in this picture of a Bullitt cluster that it has the black around the gauges, and look at the Mach 1 has the silver around the gauges, and that is standard on every Mach 1. Now here is a gauge cluster with aftermarket rings around all the gauges, but if you look apart from that, you'll notice that this is a Bullitt Mustang gauge cluster and it's in kilometers. So there were also Mach 1, Cobra, Bullitt gauge clusters made in kilometers for mostly Canada and export cars. So that's something to include in that. That's interesting. So what about the McQueen Bullitts? Has anyone heard of the McQueen Bullitts? I'll tell you the story right now. 4 Bullitt Mustangs were made specifically for the McQueen family. Now, they weren't made for them in a certain order. They weren't the first four made. They were actual four bullets that were taken off the assembly line, and they were given a special hologram sticker that actually said McQueen 1 through 4. So here is a sticker of McQueen 4. These stickers are very hard to find pictures of, but as you can see in this picture, that sticker has been placed on top of an existing Bullitt sticker. So these four McQueen bullets are included in the 5582 bullets produced. And so technically, these Bullitt Mustangs have two numbers, McQueen 1 through 4, and the corresponding Bullitt number that belongs to the car. Now, the number could probably be found underneath the back seat. I'm not sure if they put the McQueen bullets on the second hologram sticker location in the back. It's possible they did, but I'm not sure if they did. And Ford, running the VIN number, could probably find out what the actual Bullitt number to those cars actually is. Now, like I said, pictures of these do not get around very much. I did save this picture of McQueen 3, and this picture actually doesn't look like that hologram sticker has been placed on top of another one. It is not twice as thick like the other one. It's possible it is. I'm not quite sure. I don't know why it was in a blue tint in the photo, like the picture didn't come out right, but somebody a long time ago had posted this picture because they actually saw McQueen 3. But it is known that McQueen 4 was sold at auction, and originally I believe it brought $50,000, and then it had sold again. It had very low miles, and I have the whole story about this car with better pictures that we can go over. If you're interested in watching the story about this car, I have it on the YouTube channel. I'll try to put the link to that one as well in the description. But these pictures did come up of this car, and it was sold again at auction, and it's really neat to see it. It was signed by Scott Hogue, and it was one of the McQueen bullets. So it's technically a 1 in 4 car, and you can see here that it has all the neat things about it. But the coolest thing would be the signature by Scott and the McQueen 4 sticker on there, and some other signatures it looks like there. So anyway, just wanted to touch a little bit on the McQueen bullets, and I have already made a story about one of those. So basically the Bullitt Mustangs, I've mentioned before in my other videos that there are over 50 part numbers that makes a Bullitt different than a GT. Now, a lot of those part numbers are left and right, like, you know, the brakes. There would be a part number for the left brake caliper, the right brake caliper, the C-pillars, the right one, the left one, the glass, the right, the left. So it does double up a lot there. But there are quite a few parts on a Bullitt that make it special. And with all the research and development that goes into this car, it's really neat that it came out and that it paved the way for the Mach 1. And the Mach 1 was able to get some things like the 4-valve engine that the Bullitt team wanted to have on it, but just couldn't quite do it. And they actually did bring this car to market quickly. It took a lot shorter of a time to actually run it through. They weren't sure if it was even going to happen. So it's really cool that it did, and it became a very special icon. So there are probably some things that I've left out, but here we are. There's a lot of really neat things that we've gone over in this video that are special, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Bullitt. My brother had put out a really good video about the Bullitt Mustang, and it had some things about why it made it different. Mike's Garage, my good friend, had put out a video recently about the Bullitt and things about it and the differences between it and a standard GT. Great job by both of them, and there are a lot of people on YouTube who have been putting out videos about the Bullitt Mustang and what it is, walk around videos. A lot of them are car salesmen who happen to have one, and they kind of walk around and talk about how neat it is, but they don't really know all the details, and there's a lot of things out there that are repeated. So I wanted to give a little bit of something different here this time with something new. Again, you could read that book that I mentioned, and it will have a lot of detail. It does talk a lot about how they had to just keep it in the parameters of a GT. That's repeated several times in the book, and it's a good read. So there's some good information in there. But anyway, I hope you found this video informative and exciting. Again, this video wasn't like the typical what makes a Bullitt a Bullitt. You know, I brushed on most of the things about the car, the interior pieces, the brakes, the suspension, the intake manifold, the underdrive pulleys, as many things as I could think of as we went through these certain details. But if I'm missing something out, it's not because I don't know it, it's just because this video wasn't supposed to be of what makes a Bullitt a Bullitt. It was what are some things that you might not know about the Bullitt and some really neat insights about the production of the car. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate your nice comments. As usual, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more Mustang content.